Hi guys, I'm glad you're here. Thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate all of you that have subscribed and shared my videos. If you're not a member of our community, please subscribe, join us, add your comments, what you think, and little tidbits that you may hear is going on. I posted an article, I believe it was yesterday, about how the U.S. is shutting down 4 of our dry docks that builds and repairs nuclear submarines and nuclear vessels, ships, warships. We have all heard, or most of us have heard, about the laptop from hell, which seems to implicate Biden in cahoots with China, and the possibility, because of all the corruption in Ukraine, they got the goods on Biden and his son. And that is a possibility why we are sending them so much money and ammunition and food and etc. The U.S. has been in peacetime mode in the production of all our weapons and ships and submarine and ammos. Going back to World War II, way before we even got involved in that. Yeah, we were ramping up production. We were getting prepared. Well, this government, this current administration has not done that at all. Because of the outbreak of you-know-what and the mandatory you-know-whats, a lot of people were let go. Fired, whatever. So our supply chain is crippled. Many of the components that we get from China we're not getting right now. An example, supposedly the Stinger missiles. We have sent to Ukraine 1/3 of our Stinger missiles, and this here is an inventory and how long it takes to replace each item. The ones marked in red, it says it's unlikely to rebuild inventories within 5 years. Green, inventory replacement within 5 years at low risk. And yellow, rebuilding timeline unclear, but substantial risk of low inventories and long replacement cycles. Kind of like our emergency oil reserve that Biden has taken from, which is meant for emergencies in case we go to war. Well, we are already in a war. It is already World War III. All the countries are saying, yeah, we are in fact at war with Russia. I got a message from one of those in our group talking about commitments the U.S. made to Australia to build for them submarines. And now the U.S. is, reneging on that commitment, claiming that because of the earthquake threat, that's why they're closing down these dry docks, which puts Australia in deep doo-doo. All the threats that Russia has made to Australia about our military base that we got there, the ratcheting, the saber rattling that China has done Australia reminded me of the movie On the Beach. Yeah, the last part of the movie is based there in Australia. And let me pull this down. It says, after a global nuclear war, the residents of Australia must come to terms with the fact that all life will be destroyed in a matter of months. The radiation went around the world. Really good movie. I mean, for me to remember it, this is from 1959. The ending of the movie where, I guess it's Ava Gardner and Gregory Peck, were making love on the beach in the final moments before they succumb to radiation is what I remember the most. So Australians feel like the United States stabbed them in the back. At first, the U.S. claimed that they didn't have enough workers. This article from The Hill on the 20th, before they shut everything down and claimed earthquakes were the reason, it says Australia, the United States, United Kingdom, and the United States are supposed to have reached an agreement on, in the White House words, an optional pathway for an Australian conventionally armed nuclear-powered submarine capability. How that is to be done is a major issue, however, for the United States in particular. The question of how to provide Australia with such a capacity could conflict with the need to provide sufficient submarines to bolster its own deterrent against actual and potential adversaries. You know, when you go into war, you know you're going into war. You don't shut things down. You ramp things up. I guess, according to this article, we only have 50 submarines. Back in 1982 and 91, the Navy operated over 90 submarines. In 1987, that number had reached 98. So now we only have 50. Current plans called for the submarine force to reach at least 66 boats by 2051. They're evidently only capable of building one every year and a half. That's how long it takes, sometimes 2 years. To maintain a steady force of 50 submarines, the shipyards must produce at least 2 boats annually. Currently, they produce fewer than 1.5 each year. Moreover, if Congress were to provide funding for the construction of 3 boats each year, it is not clear where the yards would find the workers to build them. Well, they said that the 14,000 people that work at the Washington dry docks were not going to be put out of work. Well, it sure sounds like they are to me. There is nothing new about the shortfall in skilled workers required for nuclear-powered submarine construction. Nearly half a century ago, Admiral Hayman Rickover, father of the nuclear-powered Navy, bemoaned the shortage of skilled fitters and welders for nuclear subs. The situation today is considered worse, as America is currently in a state of virtual full employment. Because of that, hiring and training new workers is that much more difficult. Here's an image from defense.gov of Rosie the Riveter. Biden would probably claim that she was either his grandmother or great-grandmother, I suppose. Here's one of the posters from World War II about building ships. This is your firing line. Stay on the job. Don't slow up the ships. Enemy gains in shipyard battle as U.S. workers take extra day off. Yeah. Well, they're just shutting everything down. Yeah, they're doing everything they can to make us sitting ducks for who knows who. China, Russia. Here it says we're on our way. It takes 2 million gallons of high-octane gasoline to put 1,000 planes over Germany. Stick to your job. Oil is ammunition. Well, we don't have the oil. The prices are going up again. Another war poster. It says the enemy is listening. He wants to know what you know. Keep it to yourself. Yeah, just leave the top secret papers in a box next to your car in your garage, right? And everyone should be doing this right now because, yeah, you wonder, where is the food going? Okay, why are the chicken farms burning down? Well, they're saying that the chicken eggs now causes the clots. That's why so many people are recently dropping dead. Here it says, Uncle Sam says garden to cut food costs. And I'll pull it down. It says U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington, D.C. We have a shortage of cooking oil. Cooking oil can come from corn, which we grow to produce ethanol. Instead of producing ethanol, why are they not using it for food, which, yeah, has been crippled in getting the wheat, etc., because majority of that comes from Ukraine and Russia, evidently. So now we have a cooking oil shortage. So instead of growing corn for ethanol, we should be using it for human consumption. Here's an article from, let's see, December 5th. Will U.S. supply Australia with AUKUS subs? That's not going to happen. U.S. lawmaker says. And it says Representative Rob Whitman, one of the most powerful defense lawmakers on Capitol Hill, sent a shot across the bow this weekend to anyone who thinks the solution to getting Australia new nuclear attack subs is simply to have America make them. Whitman, currently the top U.S. Republican on the House Armed Service Committee, Sea Powers Committee, told Breaking Defense on Saturday interview the issue, he said, is that the U.S. cannot afford to interrupt its own submarine buy. I just don't see how we're going to build the submarine and sell it to Australia during that time. Well, they just shut everything down, so no one's going to have them. Given Australian submarines that the USN needs, particularly when its own numbers are declining or at best flatlining, it's just not an option that the U.S. political leadership will consider, Hellyer said. Ultimately, Australia will have to learn to build SSNs if they want them, but what exactly build looks like is very unclear. From the Motley Fool, back on 2018, U.S. submarines are dying. Will these two companies build our new attack subs? The U.S. fleet of nuclear-powered attack submarines is dying. The good news is the U.S. Navy has a plan to address the problem, and that would directly benefit submakers, General Dynamic, and Huntington Ingalls Industries. Here's what you need to know, it says. The procurement plan allows the Navy to maintain its goal of 40 attack subs through fiscal year 2024. Starting in fiscal 25, the service would see its force fall below 48 attack subs due to older subs being taken out of commission. In fact, by fiscal 2030, the Navy would only have 41 SSNs and wouldn't return to its stated goal of 48 vessels until fiscal year of 2035 because it takes so long to make them. The above is an issue because the Navy states that on an average day-to-day operation require the deployment of 10 attack submarines, and during peak time of war, which is coming very soon, an estimated 35 SSNs could be required for deployment within a certain amount of time. While that requirement might appear to be below the anticipated available SSNs in fiscal 2030, each sub can only be deployed for a certain amount of time before it must be revealed. That necessity having a larger force of available submarines. We are so screwed. So just like our aging nuclear power plants, where they extend the time that they can remain online, they're going to do that with these subs also. It says lengthening sub deployment from 6 months to 7 months, reducing Virginia-class construction time from 72 months to 60 months, something the Navy is already trying to do, and procuring an additional 4 SSNs beyond what is planned. So are we cutting off our nose despite our face just because we don't want to give Australia their subs? Or are we deliberately making us more vulnerable for attacks from China or even Russia? This article here was from September 2021. U.S. deal to build nuclear submarines for Australia, causing tensions with France. A diplomatic incident is heating up across the Atlantic. France has recalled its ambassador to the U.S. and Australia. That is a rare and serious step. It's part of the fallout from a deal the U.S. made with the United Kingdom to build nuclear-powered submarines for Australia. The agreement announced this week in response to China's escalating military presence in the South China Sea, but it left out the French and scuttled a deal that France says it had to build the Australian submarines. France had its own defense deal with Australia for 12 conventional submarines that was negotiated in 2016. It was a massive $43 billion deal, and now it's off. Well, they're probably regretting that, yeah, they did that to France, and because, yeah, now they're not getting them. Yeah, and I think of all the people moving to New Zealand. I hope they learn Chinese. So they're using the seismic risk. I don't buy it. I don't buy it for a minute. That area has always had earthquakes. It talks about the damage from an earthquake in 2001. They didn't shut things down then. It inflicted $8 million in damage. But it induced the shipyard to conduct a comprehensive 2-year seismic vulnerability study and made hundreds of $millions in seismic improvements. But then last week they brought in hundreds of experts, both from USGS and the Navy. And then now, after a study from 2001, they're saying, oh, guess what? We can't continue operations without even having a backup plan in the meantime to cover your butts to be able to do the work someplace else. No, let's just shut it down right when we're at war with Russia and probably China soon. You have backups of backups, and they had no backups for these dry docks that they shut down. None whatsoever. For some reason, this article has been removed. The U.S. military is scrambling to build more ammo for itself and for Ukraine, but old Army paperwork could get in the way. It was removed from Yahoo News, but it's on MSN. The U.S. Army process for producing ammunition faces challenges. A government watchdog says the problem with disorganization and bureaucracy may hamper that production. The GAO said in a statement. Production is centralized at 5 plants in Iowa, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Missouri, and Virginia, which are owned by the government but operated by private contractors, including General Dynamics and BAE. In 2001, before the Ukraine war, the Army had a $2.9 billion budget to procure conventional ammunition. That was peacetime, to replace old stock. Evidently, the Stingers only last about 10 years. And then they have to be recertified. Congress is pushing the Army to modernize its in-house industrial base, much of which dates back to World War II. The Army has responded with an ambitious $16 billion modernization plan that won't be completed until 2038. Actually, the military right now for national security is spending about close to $1.5 trillion for national defense. $1.5 trillion a year, and they want to add billions more into the new budget. It says here, Ukraine continues to expend massive amounts of ammunition. Ukraine forces were firing 6,000 artillery shells a day in June. Some say sometimes up to 10,000, while Russia may be firing 20,000 rounds a day. A recent U.S. Army market survey to identify potential new ammunition manufacturers cited a production requirement of 12,155 millimeter artillery shells a month. The problem is that even at plants that are already built and operating, it can take more than a year just to ramp up production. Yeah, what are your thoughts? I think we're screwed. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And if you're not subscribed, please join our community here. Please stay safe, and I'll talk to you later. God bless you. Bye.